What a fantastic evening's fishing I am having. You can see, I think I'm the last one on the lake. I must be. Last man standing. Everyone has gone home for their dinner, it looks like. We are at Hookbait fishery, a beautiful commercial fishery full of big old wise fish. And I've been filming today. We've been doing a bit of method feeder work to the far side and a lot of fish down the middle, if I'm honest. But what I want to talk to you about is my last half hour, because it's just been brilliant. What I'm going to do is show you how I've been catching the fish, because it is ridiculously simple. Hopefully it's going to help you guys as well when you go out fishing next, whether it's a commercial that's rammed full of fish or whether it's a commercial that just gives you a chance of catching one or two big fish maybe late on in the session. I think what I'm going to show you, listen, I'm enjoying myself. Hopefully you do as well. I'm going to get down on the gear, hopefully catch you a couple of fish. We'll see how it goes. Well folks, let me tell you, this is a brilliant way to spend a late afternoon session. It's been a fantastic day here at Hookbait. We're on the famous Moat Lake and we've had a brilliant day fishing down the middle, across the far side. We've been chucking inline method feeders and we've caught some beautiful fish, you know. But just for my little last hurrah, having a go down the edge, and it is absolutely it's fish soup in the margins. And what I want to do is, just while we're on the bank and I've got the cameras with me, I just want to talk to you about this great little tactic that just simplifies your fishing massively. And once the water warms up, it's one of those tactics which it just catches fish. It just makes everything so easy. It cuts down on all the sort of missed bites and line bites and all the issues that you sometimes have when you're fishing with a float maybe. God, this is a proper fish. I mean, I've come today really with the idea of catching smaller fish, and I've got to admit I've not got the right landing net head on for some of these fish. This is a beautiful fish. I mean, the average size of fish that I've been catching out in open water today has been sort of like £6–7, you know, your standard commercial carp. But some of these fish in the margins are just, they're proper old big warriors. God. Here he comes. I think while we're playing this fish, we can talk about the gear. You can see I've only got a short rod. It's a little 9-foot rod. It's a, well, it says on the butt it's an F1 special. It's a Free Spirit High S F1 special. You can see that the soft rod I think is really important for big fish, especially when you're using inline feeders. I think the fish can shake against the feeder and the weight of the feeder can shake the hook out. So a nice soft rod is important. I don't care what it says on the butt, whether this rod's for F1s or not. It's doing a cracking job today of catching these carp. I've got nice robust mainline. This is no nonsense fishing. We've got 8-pound mainline on the reel. This is 8-pound M-Tech. Tough as old boots. It means that we're not going to get snapped by any big fish, especially as the day goes on and there's a bit of wear and tear on your main line. We've got a nice little 440 size reel, which matches this light rod perfectly. And hook length wise, I mean, this guy does not want to give up. Hook length wise, we've got 0.18 to a size 12. So we've got pretty robust tackle. Yeah, at the same time, I think it's balanced and we've got a brilliant chance of landing all species of fish, because it's not just been carp that we've been catching on this line. We've had quite a few nice bream as well. Sort of like 2–3 pound bream, something like that sort of stamp. Obviously it's these carp that we're after. And if we do eventually get this fish in, he's putting up a pretty good scrap. I'd like to make sure he ends up in the net rather than still in the lake. I'll talk you through the process because, as I say, it's ridiculously simple, but quite often in fishing, the simplest way is often the best way. I think quite often we complicate things for ourselves a little bit. There we go, is he coming up now? I mean, he's a beautiful fish. In this little net, we're going to be shuffling this carp in the net, let me tell you. I've been seeing tail patterns in the margins, and you can just tell there's some big fish down there. Obviously, when you're attached to one, it's even better than seeing them down there. He does not like it. He does not like it. This time around, I think. This time around, here he comes. Here he comes. Oh, there he goes. So much power. You see, I like to set my drag so it just clicks away when sort of there's maximum pressure applied to the rod. So when the rod almost sort of locks out, I think that I want the drag to give a bit of line and make sure that we're not going to get broken. I do like to backwind as well. Quite a few people have commented that I use both the backwind and the drag. So I always think that fish is going on a major run, I'm a little bit quicker with the backwind and I can let a bit of line out. And with a drag, I always feel that sometimes I have to adjust it during the fight, and if I've not done that and the fish does tear away, I've still got that backwind in reserve. And it's just, you know, everyone does things a little bit different. That's sort of how I've been brought up. When I started fishing when I was a youngster, the drags on reels were terrible, so obviously it was all backwind. Here we go. Oh, what a unit. Oh my word. He's in though, he's in the net. He's a proper unit. Look at that. What a fantastic fish. He's cradled nicely in there. Look at the tail on that. That's why he was so powerful when we were playing him. So I'm going to put that down for a second. I mean, I don't really. Let's see if we can just hold him up, but he's got to be like 14 pound, we're going to say. Sometimes you get over the top when you first land your fish and he's in the net, but God, he's ridiculously long. Look at that. What a beautiful fish. He is a proper old warrior. Probably been in this lake for donkey's years, and he's as old as the hills. I bet he's seen it all, you know. There we go, mate. Back you go. Now, the tactic I want to talk to you about, as I keep saying, it is so simple, it is ridiculous. It's something that we probably all do, or a lot of us do when we're packing up at the end of a session. And especially as feeder anglers, we like to leave it to the last second, and we like to leave a rod out for as long as possible. And it's basically just fishing in the margin with the rod we've been fishing out at distance with, but feeding a bit of bait over the top. What you'll find is, these fish that are in the margins, they want bait, especially later on in the afternoon or early evening, they want some bait. And what I see a lot of people do is they just lay their rod in the margin, lay the feeder in the margin and expect it to tow round. That's fantastic. But the fish in the air, like I say, they want some bait. So what I generally do, and what I want to get across to you today, is the need to feed. So I've got some fishery 8mm, and I'm feeding quite aggressively down the margins. Now, we all know, obviously feeding bait is fantastic, you're getting fish in your peg. But what tends to happen is, when you go down your margin with your float goes round in circles, there's loads of carp in the edge and you get line bites, especially feeding the way that I've just done. I've scattered bait everywhere, I've fed it in a really sort of like agricultural way. That bait's gone everywhere. And if I was to present a rig down in amongst that bait, I'm just not going to get a bite, you know. I'm just going to get line bites, maybe foul hook a fish, if I get a bite at all, because my bait, the spread of my bait is too much. Now, the upside of that bait spread is the fact that the noise on the surface and the spread of bait, that's brilliant for attracting fish. So I'm going to attract loads of fish into my margin, but at the same time, they're going to be difficult to catch because I've fed in that particular way. So many times, and maybe you guys are the same, I've been caught out by fishing in the margins late on in a session with my pole, and time short late on in a session, whether it's in a match or whether you're just waiting for that last cast. You've only got half an hour to make the most of that margin swim. Sometimes you foul hook a couple of fish on the pole, or you just can't get it right. Your presentation's just not right, or your feeding's just not right. And by the time you feel you've worked it out, it's time to go home or the match is finished. But by keeping things really simple and literally just plonking your method feeder in the margin, you're creating that lovely perfect trap that we all know method feeder is fantastic. It's fishing for you all the time. And by using a method feeder coupled with loose fed pellets over the top, you're creating such an attractive area of your swim with your method feeder being the cherry on the cake. That's what's going to catch you those fish. Now, you'll probably notice I've not used a mould to load the feeder. That's for good reason. I'm using a hard pellet as hook bait. I'm trying to match the hatch. I'm feeding a lot of 8mm pellets. I want to fish an 8mm pellet on the hook or on the hair. That means I've got a push stop on the hair, I've got a size 12 hook on, and I've got a nice gap, I'd say, between the hook bait and the hook. I want a bit of movement because I'm fishing for big fish. I want to make sure that hook has got a lot of air, a lot of chance to grab the fish's lips. Now, if I was to load this little tiny feeder up with a mould, the fear is I'm going to crush the pellet, and also sometimes a mould just doesn't really work with a big bait and a little feeder. So I want to do it by hand, being a little bit old school. You probably notice as well, I put the first layer of pellets on really firmly. I'm wedging that first layer in because, again, I want some bait around my hook bait. By wedging that first layer in, I know I've got at least some micros. They might be rock hard micros still wedged in the feeder, but at least I've got some micro pellets around my hook bait or very close to my hook bait. Now, bait wise, we'll just lower this in and amongst those pellets because the fish are coming in so fast, you know, they're mopping that bait up so fast, they're coming to that noise on the surface. So I want to make sure this goes in. So I'm just lowering that in, right in the middle of those pellets. And that is on a tight line. I've lowered it in on a tight line. Actually felt the fish as that went in then, so hopefully it's not too long before we get a fish. Make sure it goes in. I don't want to move the fish, just like any other style of fishing. I'm setting the clutch nice and lightly because if I'm not looking, or especially even if I'm looking, to be fair, when I pick up that rod, the fish is going to want to take off 9 times out of 10. And if I've not got a nice lightly set clutch, it's going to break me. Right, bait wise, I've got with me my 8mm, fishery only pellets here, so I've got some fishery only 8mm. They've loose feeding over the top by hand. And I've got my micros. These are the 2mm. I've soaked them up, obviously for using around a method feeder. They've been great. They've worked on every single swim that we've fished today, whether it be across, down the middle. They've just worked really well. Now, I've got a tiny bit of ground bait. This is F1 Sweet, and the reason it's only a small amount is this is just to add to those micros, just to sort of fill the gaps in a little bit when I'm making a feeder up. I think that the extra smell is brilliant. I love this F1 Sweet, you know I do. And just by filling the gaps in amongst those pellets, you can alter the breakdown rate of the feeder. So I can slow the breakdown rate down if I add a bit more ground bait. I can speed it up if I don't add as much ground bait. It just seems to go around a feeder a little bit nicer as well with that ground bait included. So I know I'm fishing effectively by adding a little bit of extra ground bait. Plus, I know that my little method parcel slightly different to what a lot of guys are lowering in or chucking in as well. So just by adding that a little bit of extra smell, a little bit of extra attraction, I think it works really well. So that's the trap set. Now it's just a case of waiting for an indication. What I don't want to do is leave a feeder in the swim for like 10 minutes. That's counterproductive. We know that these fish are coming in, they're mopping up the bait really quick, then they're going away. You can see that by the indications we're getting on the tip. We're getting line bites. As soon as we lower that feeder in, we're getting line bites, showing that those fish have come to the rattle of those 8mm pellets on the surface. They've come to the feeder. We know that there's activity in the swim. So the last thing we want to do is just sit there, sit with our hands in our pockets for 10 minutes. We want to be active. We want to be in and out, maybe casting or low. I'm saying casting. We want to be swinging that feeder into the swim every 3 or 4 minutes. We want to be feeding bait over the top. And another benefit of this method is we can feed bait over the top. Quite often, if you were pole fishing or float fishing, if you were to feed bait over the top, again, you're scattering bait around, you're making noise on the surface, those fish start moving around up in the water, maybe they try and intercept the falling bait. What happens is, you're just going to get line bites. At least with this method, we're fishing effectively. Our line, in theory, is laying on the bottom, our bait's on the bottom, we've got our hook bait in the right place, you know, we're fishing. Just had a fish bow wave out then, a really big fish, but we're still getting a little indication on the tip, so there's fish in the area. I mean, there's definitely some big fish milling around. We've got the ducks for company too now, so. And these are the things that we've got to read, because I think that fish has bow waved out there, has either touched the line or he's been near the feeder, and he's probably scattered that bait. So just as you would if you were pole fishing, we probably need to reset that trap. So what I think we're going to do is we'll have another lower in, another underarm in there. So again, I'm just going to wedge those pellets. Like I say, it's such a simple way of fishing. I'm going to wedge those pellets in. I'm going to sandwich my 8mm. These drilled 8mm sit a lot nicer than maybe a banded 8mm do, so I always like to drill a few. And we can lower it in. We're still getting indications down there. I don't want to feed mountains of bait, I just want to feed enough bait to maybe attract 2 or 3 big old wise hippos. I mean, you can see that there's hardly an angler on the lake now. It's sort of early evening. It's the ideal time to do this, and I'd love to be able to get you one straight away, but I don't think you can catch a 12 or 15 pounder every single chuck. It'd be nice if we could. Might take a couple of casts to get one, but you never know. If it tows round this time, I'll feel like a hero. If it doesn't, we'll just have a couple more chucks and see if we can get you one. There's definitely loads of activity down there. You can see the tip. Read that on the tip. I mean, I'm using quite a fine quiver tip. I still want to see every little indication, even though I'm fishing short. And I know that my bites are literally going to try and drag the rod into the water, but I still want to see every little indication. And I also think that a soft quiver tip sometimes keeps your feeder in place, you know. So if a fish does swim into your main line, he's pulling your tip around rather than moving that feeder. So that definitely helps keep your feeder in place. I just left that in the swim for probably 30 seconds or a minute longer than look at him go. I was getting so many indications, you could just tell that there was some fish in the swim. So I think when it's like that, you've got to leave it in the swim, but it didn't need to tear off. You can see what I mean if you were fishing with standard pole tackle. Obviously we're still early in the year, so you probably couldn't fish ridiculously heavy end tackle if you were fishing pole in the margins. I just don't think you'd be able to balance it with the right elastic to stop that initial run. I mean, the fish in here are so fit and healthy and tough. some of these fish, they've got to be, well, they're at least 20 years old, I guess. A lot of these fish, maybe getting on for a bit more than that. So they've seen it, they're ridiculously tough, and they're clever fish as well. This one isn't even that big. It's a lovely little common by the looks of it. There we go. I say little. A beautiful fish. And you can see there we've had, well, what have we been doing? What have we been fishing for? Maybe 15 minutes sort of thing. And we've had 2 beautiful fish. This fish is maybe £8, something like that. 2 beautiful fish for at least £20. He's got a couple of war wounds on his side, this guy. Other than that, he's a cracking fish. So we've had 2 for £20 on a really simple tactic. Great fun on a short little rod at close quarters. The perfect tactic for if you're struggling to sort your margins out. Why not try simplifying everything and making it easy for yourself, and it will result, hopefully, in beautiful fish like that. Until next time, guys, tight lines.